in other countries, in Mexico, and even places here in the U.S. They're injecting illegal or non-FDA cleared substances in the body that's not approved to be used in the penis. And I had some penises come in that you would not have recognized it was a penis. This has turned girth enhancement into something that's safe, and has an aesthetically appealing outcome. I showed it to one of my reconstructive urology friends, and he said, "You have something here that we urologists have been looking for from the dawn of urology."
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Travis Makes Friends. Today, I am in Dallas, Texas, and I'm making friends with William Moore, the Dick Whisperer. William, what's up, man?
Hey, man, how you doing? It's good to be here.
Oh, it's a little hot here, but not as bad as Vegas. So I'm happy to have a little bit of a respite. It's actually kind of cloudy and overcast right now outside. So I'm happy about that too.
Yeah, we'll have a nice day, it seems like.
Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't sound like we'll have as nice of a day as you've had for the past week and a half. You're telling me that you've been up north.
I've been up north, just south of Long Island on a little barrier island called Fire Island, just sort of relaxing, mid-70s. Perfect weather. I think it rained for about 3 hours one day, but it's been beautiful.
Nice, man. Well, I'm glad that you got a little bit of relaxation in. Sometimes you need it. You know what I mean? All right, so let's talk. There's so many directions that I want to take this conversation, but let's start at the beginning and build some context, because I doubt that your career counselor sat you down when you were 15 and you were like, I want to do this, and then ended up where you are now. So let's rewind the clock and go back in time. Let's say, talk to me, 11, 12-year-old William. What were you up to set the scene for us?
11 or 12 years old, I was into art.
Okay.
Everything art. I liked to draw. I could replicate anything. I was in all types of mediums, painting and collages and sculptures, and I did pottery on a wheel. So I've always had an artistic interest.
Okay.
But I never really saw that as an option. I grew up in a really small town in Alabama. It's called Aliceville, Alabama, and I had 2,000 people in my hometown. I graduated with 20 people that I went from kindergarten through 12th grade with.
Nice.
So, I mean, I knew their grandparents, phone numbers, their aunts and uncles' phone numbers. I knew, we knew everything about them. And so I didn't really have a lot of options that I knew about. So what I did know about was architecture. And so I always thought that I was going to be an architect all the way from junior high all the way through high school. And even when I started college, that's what I thought the direction was going to be, was architecture.
What was that, just related to art? Or
I think it was related to art, and I liked design, and I liked to draw houses. I drew a lot of houses whenever and I drew the house my dream house. I was always drawing my dream house.
What did your parents do?
My mother was a cosmetologist for the first probably 10 years of my life.
Okay.
And then she, maybe even 12 or so, and then she moved over into a entry-level banking position, and she worked her way up to become a vice president of the bank that she worked at. Okay. And my father was a truck driver. He was a welder when I was younger, and then he became a truck driver, and that's what he did when he finished his career.
Was there any sort of nudge from your parents at all for like what they kind of wanted you to do or anything like that?
There really wasn't. And sometimes I wish that there had been some guidance. Like I have a niece and a nephew, and I've tried to give them a little bit of guidance that I didn't have as being an entrepreneur. I always knew that it was an option to work for myself because my mother did it. My mother had a hair salon, and I grew up in her hair salon. And she was a co-owner. She and one other lady had it. It was called the Shampoo Shack. How funny. and I grew up in there, and I would do things. I would try and give manicures to women, and they would tip me $1. So I always knew that I could make money myself.
Yeah.
And then whenever I was turned 15 years old, I got my lifeguard certificate from the American Red Cross. I started lifeguarding every summer, and then I got what's called water safety instructor, where I could teach swimming lessons, and I did that for about 10 years, all the way through college and through graduate school. And so I always knew that there was the option for me to make money by myself.
So did you go to school for architecture then?
No, I ended up going to, my bachelor's degree is actually in sports medicine.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So
Why the switch?
There was no medical school or nursing school at the school that I was at. I probably would have chose nursing if I had the option, but so exercise science is the bachelor's degree that gets you working towards a clinical exercise physiology degree. So you can do cardiac rehab and you can do more personalized fitness instruction with different populations. Okay. And I did do a master's degree in clinical exercise physiology.
Okay.
Before I started doing an MBA here at Texas A&M Commerce.
Okay, so by the time you got to college age, the architecture thing was kind of
it was gone. It was, you know what? It was the math. I realized very quickly when I got into the math classes that the math in college level was just not for me. I was a science person, always into science and biology and anatomy and physiology. Yeah. That was my game, and so I realized that it needed to be something that worked with the human body. And I also always had a desire to help people and to work with people, and I think that that's just part of my genetics, is to be able to work with people and help them.
Did you do you look back on your time in college as like fond memories, good memories, great time, not as great time, eager to get out? What was your time in college like?
I had a great college life. You know, I grew up in a very small town. I ended up becoming a college cheerleader for football and basketball. So I did that for a couple of years in college. I took gymnastics whenever I was a freshman in college and learned how to tumble and do back tucks and that sort of thing. And so by my sophomore year, I was able to try out for the cheerleading squad. And so I did that, and it was a great group of people on the cheerleading squad. Most of the guys that were on there had planned to be on the football team, and for some reason that didn't work out, or whatever reason. But we had a great time. My college years were fantastic. So were my graduate school years as well. Yeah.
Did you go around where you grew up, or did you get out?
I thought that I was leaving, so all my friends went to the University of Alabama, and I went all the way across the state line to Mississippi State University, and that's where I did my bachelor's degree. All the way. It was like an hour and 15 minutes. And then I did my master's degree in exercise physiology in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is not very far from New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And so I spent most of my weekends when I was in graduate school in New Orleans.
Okay, gotcha. How was that?
It was fun. Yeah. I ended up moving there when I finished my master's degree. I worked for a hospital there for almost a year, and I didn't like the city once I lived in it. Gotcha. It wasn't a city for me to live in. It was a city for me to visit in. Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. It's a pretty sweet spot, but yeah, it's like, I don't know if I could live there. Although we were just talking about this before we hit the record button. People say that about Vegas all the time. And I like living in Vegas. So, and I have a wife, 2 kids. Like we live like a family, like a local community family life. Like we don't live a Vegas nightlife. I'm not a big gambler or partier or anything like that. So, I don't know. Maybe we just knew that. Maybe we just know the wrong people in New Orleans. You know what I mean?
Well, I lived 5 blocks from the French Quarter. So,
okay. Well, then that probably explains it.
That probably explains a lot of it, yeah.
You can't even go to sleep at night because there's too much music around everywhere. Yeah. Okay, so coming out of college, you worked in New Orleans for a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you just leave because you didn't like the city? Or were you actively looking for like another type of career opportunity? Or what brought you?
I didn't like the city, and I had a really close friend that was moving to Dallas, and she's a female. She moved here in July. I moved here in November of the same year. That was 1999.
Okay,
and I sort of visited her a couple times and realized that Dallas was a great city.
Okay,
and I love Dallas to this day. There's so many great things about Dallas. It was calm. I was able to live a normal life. I got a job here. It was not a great job. It was a job selling insurance.
Nice.
But it got me here, and it sort of got me on the path to want to do an MBA. So it sort of led me into the direction. So it was kind of a little bit of healthcare, but some business, and it just made me think that, maybe I want to do something a little bit more with my education.
Do you live downtown?
I live 5 blocks from here.
Oh, really?
I live just on the other side of the Sheraton. I'm very close. It took me 7 minutes to get here this morning.
Okay, so you like living in the cities?
Yeah, so I do. I live in a neighborhood just on the other side of the Sheraton. It's where the houses start. And so I actually have a swimming pool, which is not very common for anyone that lives in this area of town. So I have a normal
definitely would
neighborhood.
not get, like, for those listening, like, you walk outside, it's skyscraper, like we're in downtown Dallas. So that is interesting that there's like actual houses that close to here. I wouldn't have thought that.
It is, yeah. So just a few blocks away. And so I live in a normal neighborhood. There's a school on one side of me. There's a school on another side of me. I can walk to the gym.
You can walk to almost anything.
I can watch a lot of stuff. Yeah.
What's the best, like, restaurant around here that you walk to?
The best restaurant.
This is a selfish question because I want to eat somewhere tonight.
So you're not going to be able to walk to it because of really where you are. But it's a restaurant that's called the E-Bar, which is a Mexican restaurant. But I can give you some suggestions for some better stuff to walk to.
I would love that.
Okay.
I'm a big foodie, so I try to walk everywhere so that I have an excuse to eat a little bit more.
That's a great idea. That's great. Yeah.
That makes me feel better anyway. I don't know if it actually works, but it makes me feel better about eating it. I'm curious. So I grew up actually kind of similar with the fact that I went to kindergarten through 12th grade, and my graduating class was like 35 or something like that.
You're the first person that I've ever met that has anything similar to that.
Oh, really?
I really have never met anyone else that can even tell me the same thing.
I was going to ask you, so I'm curious, do you still, like, keep in contact with any of the people that you went to school with or graduated with?
I keep in contact with, yes, I do. Probably 8 to 10 of them through Facebook regularly. There's a couple different group chat messages that I have with some of them. Yeah. So yeah, I do.
That's one of, like, the major pros to growing up in that type of a world is the friendships that you have. Like, some of those people I haven't talked to in a really long time or I haven't seen in a long time, but, like, if you see them ever, it's like
you never left.
Yeah, they're siblings almost. Like really feel they really feel like your siblings. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of what direction you end up going in life, or, you know, even if you end up on different pages with values or morals or religion or politics, it's just like, those are like my brothers and sisters. I grew up with those people. It's hard to, like, not be immediate fast friends again whenever we get to see each other or hang out or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think most people don't understand that. Like, I tell my friends about it, and I don't think that they can quite comprehend the relationships that were formed during those 13 years. Some of us 14 years, because we went to kindergarten for 2 years together.
Kindergarten for 2 years?
We had 4-year-old kindergarten and 5-year-old kindergarten, and then we had first grade. And I literally went through from K4 through 12th grade with some of them. So that was 14 years.
Yeah, built some really deep friendships there for sure.
For sure.
Okay, so that was just again a side selfish question. Jumping back into the story, so you are now in Dallas. You're selling insurance, and you think you want to get an MBA. What's your advice to somebody in 2024 who maybe just graduated college and they're considering getting an MBA themselves, with the current landscape of the economy as you see it? What would be your advice to them based on your experience going back and getting an MBA?
Well, so there's a lot of classes that I took in my MBA that I think were just filler, that I think didn't help me a whole lot. But there were some important classes. So, for instance, I owned med spas for 20 years. I owned 4 med spas before I sold them off in 2022 and moved directly into the career that I'm in now. But I did my accounting myself for 20 years. I never had a bookkeeper. I only sent my QuickBooks file over to my CPA. So some of the most valuable education that I ever got was actually in my MBA, in my accounting classes, in my finance classes. And I had a concentration in human resources.
Okay.
And I took some classes from one of my favorite professors that I'm still in touch with. I just spoke to her about 3 months ago, and she taught classes that were HR related, such as organizational change and organizational behavior and different things like that really helped me with employees, like really helped me sort of understand how to interact with employees, because I don't think that people always know those things. I mean, sometimes people have the ability that's just within them to be able to do that. But I definitely learned a lot about how to handle people and how to talk to people, and when people were having problems, how to address those problems. And this particular professor was a PhD psychologist with an MBA, and so she's a business psychologist. And I actually hired her after I finished, and she came in and she did some consultation work for me. She organized some retreats for my staff early on. Whenever we were we would go to Austin and stay at a resort and do some. Yeah. So, and she did all the activities. She was great. But so I definitely recommend the MBA. It's not easy, especially when you're working. I really struggled with it, and at the time, this was before online learning. Sure. So everything was in class, and there was a lot of books to read and that sort of thing. There still is, I'm sure, but it would be a little bit easier if I didn't have to go into the class.
Zoom in.
Yeah,
right.
I think so. That might make it easier than what it was for me, but I definitely recommend it.
Do you think the education is as good?
I don't know. I'm very curious. I have a nephew in college. My nephew that's in college, he says that all of his classes are 100% in person. He doesn't do anything online. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I thought that most classes had probably moved to a hybrid, but evidently they have not. I really enjoyed the interaction with other professionals when I was doing my MBA.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm sure that you still get that interaction.
Yeah, it's
some way.
It can't be as good.
It can't be as good. That's what I think too. I agree with you. It can't be as good.
Yeah. And that's to me, half the reason to even go do those things. Like that's the only thing that I've thought about in terms of, because I've never got an MBA or anything like that. And I've thought about man, would it be worth the work to go back? Because basically, long story short, the K through 12 I went through was kind of a religious community. And so I ended up going to college that was on the same campus. So a lot of the kids I went to K through 12 with, I also went to all of college with.
Wow.
But I graduated with an unaccredited Bible degree. So if I went back to try to get an MBA, I would have to go back and I would have to find a school that accepts the credits from the school that I went to, because after I left, they got some sort of retroactive, some random tier of accreditation, so that if I took them and went to a school that had a concentration that was somewhat biblical or something, that they would take some of my credits. So, but I would still have to take another probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 semesters worth of classes to be able to even complete my bachelor's. And then I'd have to go get an MBA. So I was just like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot of stuff to do just to go get something that says that I can do what I already do.
I was going to say, what you do, you are excelling with it without an MBA. That would be maybe a waste of time for you.
But the only thing that I've thought about is just it would be cool to get to know a bunch of other people who are on that same path, who are on that same trajectory. And that would be the only thing that I tell younger kids when they ask me, because I obviously don't have that experience, is first of all, go ask somebody who actually got an MBA what they would say. But my thing is just think about it from a relationship perspective, not just from a knowledge perspective, because the speed of knowledge is so fast anymore. You know what I'm saying? The flow of information is so fast, and especially in some of these programs as it relates to business or marketing or some of these other things, by the time you graduate, the stuff you learned in your first year is kind of outdated already. It's the point is the knowledge is going to be something that you're going to continue to gain, and you can get that on YouTube or podcasts or books and from a mentor. You can get the knowledge elsewhere, but the relationships piece of it is that's a major piece to be able to come out of that world with a connection to a professor or somebody else who's in that class who maybe you end up starting a business with, or they have a complementary skill set to you and you end up working together at some point, or you get better access to careers or jobs afterwards. There's a lot of, it's more access, relationships and things like that, I feel anymore, which is usually what I tell people, but after I tell them to go talk to somebody who already got an MBA.
Well, I would say that, to comment on that, I'm going to call it the water cooler talk that happens in between classes and coming to classes and going to classes.
Yeah,
that is sometimes just as important as the lecture that I would get that day. And so you absolutely would not have that water cooler talk, if you will, and be able to actually get in to speak to someone about what their job is like. There was an executive with Southwest Airlines that was in my program, and I had a few classes with him, and just to hear about the things that he deals with at work is not at all what I got from my lectures. So it's a great combination, I think, to be able to be there in person.
Yeah. Okay, so you're selling insurance, getting an MBA. At what point are you just kind of okay, I'm done with this thing, I'm going to start my own?
Well, I took a contract job. It was a 2-year contract with a company here in Dallas called Thompson Legal. And I did phone support for a tax software program, basically. And I did that for 2 years. And they actually had let everyone on the contract go. I was the very first person to let go. And my boss and I were still very close to this day. And she tried to get me on full time, but they weren't hiring full time. And it was a blessing. Everything that doesn't work out has always turned into a blessing for me. It was a blessing because whenever they weren't able to put me on, take me from contract to full time with the company directly, is when I began to explore the world of aesthetics. And I just happened to go and have a laser hair removal procedure on the back of my neck. And
Gotcha.
And it was a horrific experience. And this was in 2002. Really? So the lasers were just in the very forefront. There were not very many people in Dallas that even had lasers for hair removal. There might have been 4 or 5 places.
Yeah.
And I had a really bad experience. And I asked the guy what his education was, and he didn't have any education. And so I thought, okay,
it's just a guy with a laser.
I'm educated, and I have clinical experience, and so I know, I know sterile technique. I've been drawing blood. I mean, all these things. I think I can do this, and so I actually went and researched and found what I thought, and it happened to be the best lasers for hair removal. The banks were loaning money like crazy back then, and so I was able to get a loan for an $85,000 laser for hair removal that I would never at this day be able to get. Nobody would ever give me a loan for that at this point in at the age of 28 years old with no business history and no business credit. And so I got this laser and I opened up this 1-room laser shop and I focused on men, full backs, chest, abdomens, necklines, back of the neck. And it was booming. I was advertising in there was a newspaper here called the Sporting Page, and we have a newspaper here called the Dallas Observer, and I was in the yellow pages. Can you imagine having a full page in the yellow pages? I had a full page in the yellow pages. Nice. I laugh at it now, at the way that we advertised things back then, but that business blew up. I mean, I'm telling you, I was doing $30,000 to $35,000 per month. In laser hair removal.
With one $85,000
laser. Me and a room, and I took my computer from my house. I took my desk from my house. I took 2 chairs from my house. The only thing that I bought was a treatment table. Everything came from my house, and I opened up this. The room was about like this for the treatment room, and then there was an adjoining room where I checked people in and out. I didn't have anyone to sit at the front desk when I wasn't there. It was literally just me.
Yeah.
And then I bought a second laser and hired someone, and then I bought another device and got another room, and I took up all the space that was in that building. It was almost like what we're in now, and I just kept adding rooms onto it until there were no more rooms left.
And adding services,
adding services and rooms. Yeah, okay. So services and rooms and employees. I ended up having myself plus 2 other laser techs and estheticians at that location, and there was no more space, and so I had told you how much money I was making, and so I had saved money. I had money. Yeah. And so I was able to build out a brand new, beautiful med spa with 7 treatment rooms, consultation room, office areas for cash, no loan. And so that is when my aesthetics career really took off because I was able to add a lot more services, and I was a major med spa in Dallas. One of the most well-known med spas. I was one of the first. So in 2003, there were only probably 6 or 7 that were open, and so I was in the forefront. And so all the sales reps knew me. They came to me first when they had equipment, and I usually had first dibs at trying to offer the services in my clinic. And so we were just on the forefront of everything. And then that's just how everything sort of transitioned into what I'm doing now.
So you just kept expanding. What made you want to get out of that?
I'd always had my mind set on 20 years that I wanted to have the clinics for 20 years, which I did. Okay. And so it ended up, the timing was that I sold them at my 20-year anniversary. But I only left it because my current job, which is PhalloFill, exploded, and it needed my time, and it was growing so much faster, and and it was a new innovation, and all these top urologists were begging to be able to offer the service, and I just couldn't do both. So it was just time. The timing worked out to exit out of the med spa industry and then to focus on men's health.
So what's your overarching, I guess, feeling, since you've had a pulse on that industry for so long, on the med spa industry as a whole? And just for some context, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this show. One thing that I've been talking about a little bit more recently is, instead of like starting and building a business from scratch, is to go buy a business that's already doing revenue, already has employees, already has profit, and you can go get an SBA loan and put some money down, and now you have a business. And med spas are one of the ones that I've been like looking at more and more recently, just because they seem to be, decent margin businesses. They seem to be still like really in demand. It doesn't seem to be something that shifts with economic cycles, oddly enough. You would think theoretically it does. But I'm curious on your perspective on just owning a med spa, that industry as a whole. Would you do it again? Is it a different landscape? Is it's still possible to, or probable even, to make one successful in 2024 versus 2003? Like, just kind of overarching advice there.
Absolutely. I believe it's possible to live a good life out of a med spa in today's climate. That med spa absolutely changed my life. I never would have dreamed that I would be in the financial position that I'm in today when I was at the age of 28, when I began to start the med spa. And, this is funny. So my goal, when I was in college, was to own a BMW 3 Series.
Nice.
That was my goal, was to own a BMW. And I'm not disking that car at all, but, that's a great car. But that's how high my goals have been set. That was a
your
big
dream
goal.
car is a
Coming from Alabama. That was nobody had BMWs or Mercedes. We didn't have there was not one in my entire county.
The 3 Series would be like the cheapest BMW you can buy, basically.
And that was my goal. Yeah. And I ended up having 2 Aston Martin DB11s. So I mean, it's like I did well with it.
Yeah,
so
you did a little bit better than a BMW 3 Series. Again, not to shit on 3 Series.
No, it's a great car.
But an Aston Martin DB11 though, that's a car.
That's a car. Yeah. So I had a couple of McLarens. I really, really enjoyed life with the med spa, and so it was great for me. Now the climate is different than it was in 2003. I mean, when I opened, there were 5.
Yeah.
The closest one was probably 3 or 4 miles away from me. And so now there's a med spa, literally sometimes 2 in a strip center, 1 on every corner, sometimes 2 or 3 on the block. So the competition is definitely greater now, but there's also a higher demand for the services, and more people are doing the services, men and women. Now, as far as wanting to start one from scratch versus buying one that already is profitable, I think that buying one that's already profitable is going to be the better way to go, because it's really hard to get people in your door now when there's so many doors that are opened. So it's going to be really tough to build a clientele. So when I sold mine, I had 18,000 in my database for them to market to. So there was a huge potential for someone who had the time and effort to put into it. That's really tough whenever you go into to a business and you're starting from zero.
Yeah, and that's who you're competing against.
And everyone's on social media, everyone's on Instagram, everyone else has got search engine optimization with Google if they've been around for a year or two. So you have to fight to even get your positions high enough to even have some natural search results. And then you're paying a tremendous amount of money for Google ads if you're going to try and get a business started. So it would scare me a little bit more right now. And I think that I probably would not have been as successful if I started from scratch today as I was when I started from scratch in 2003.
Sure. Yeah. Are there any markers you should be aware of or look for? Like if you're pouring through some, if you don't really know what you're looking for, you're not a expert in these things, and you sign an NDA and they send over a P&L and you're just kind of like looking at an expense sheet and you're just like, I don't know, really, like, are there red flags on this? I have no idea. Is there anything that you should kind of be aware of?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I like to look at consumables because a lot of times they have services that have a really high consumable, which means that you have to pay per use with the equipment.
Okay.
I always tried to stay away from things that had really high consumables.
Okay.
Injectables for the face, that's a really high consumable. So when you're looking at profit or gross profit, you want to be able to make sure that you understand maybe there's some room to change injectables and go to a different brand that might save you $100 to $150 per syringe, which turns out to be quite a bit of money in your pocket. There's a lot of things like that, consumables, staffing, the way that commissions are paid for the existing clinic. You want to look at those. I'm a big believer sometimes that entrepreneurs or business owners, we hurt ourselves by sometimes giving someone a good salary. We think that we're giving a spa manager or a manager of a business a good salary. But then when you think about it, when they're paid and they get a paycheck every month without fail, or every 2 weeks without fail, growing the business can turn out to just be a pain in their ass.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
there's no urgency.
There's no urgency, yeah. and it just creates more work.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't. Sometimes I think about it. I'm like, I really did this wrong sometimes because I was paying a really, really good salary, but then it wasn't any urgency for anyone else to do anything more, and I was the only one who would suffer and not get a paycheck if we didn't have a good month.
Right.
And so I have some thoughts now that may be different about how I would pay people.
Kind of incentivize more bonus structures, things like that.
There's better ways, and I would even seek to see a consultant that might give me some different options that might say, hey, we've seen that this works well. This is another way that works well, and this is something that's totally different that works okay, and try and figure out which one. But there's a lot to think about that I didn't know to think about in the very beginning because it was a new industry. Yeah,
sure. Now, like you said, they're all over the place. Now it's like you can't, there are advertisements all over the place. The clinics are all over the place, specializing in different things. Like there's so many of them. Is there a certain revenue or profit, not even margin, but really just total volume that you should be, if you're going to buy a bit, like buy one, you probably shouldn't be under, X in EBITDA or X in gross revenue?
Well, so the most that my med spa made, which was actually the year after COVID, I think it was the year of COVID, we had a pretty good year. People didn't travel and they stayed at home. And so they had money to spend on themselves because they didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
And even part of 2021, it was difficult to travel to Europe and to different places. And so there were a lot of people, we were busy. We were very busy. Whenever we were able to open back up, we were busy. I think 2021, I did 2.4 or 2.5 million that year in sales.
Wow.
And so I would look for a med spa that is grossing somewhere between $180 to maybe $200,000 per month.
Okay.
And then I would really analyze what the staff cost is for that and what the consumables cost is. And of course, rent and advertising.
So if one of their larger profit channels comes from consumables, that might be a red flag.
It's still be a red flag. Yeah. And then also if they're having to spend a tremendous amount of money on Google ads to get people in the door, I had been open for so long. I did not run Google ads for about the last 10 years that I was open.
Wow.
So my website ranked so high. Like we would come up first for cool sculpting. We came up first for, acne. We came up first for skin tightening, whatever the services were that people were typing in, we came up first for almost everything, cellulite reduction. So I didn't have to pay for any Google ads. Another thing that I think is really important is that sometimes people look at buying a med spa and they think, oh, this is a cash cow and this is just going to print money for me. And I believe that the owner actually has to be in there and make relationships with the people who are coming in, because I feel like I did a lot better than the current owners of my clinic because I was in there every day and I touched every patient in the consultation. So no one came in that did not know who I was and did not know me and did not have a relationship with me. And I was very good at putting people at ease, and I'm very much of an educator, and I have a really good physiology background. And so I was able to break down what was happening with the skin and with the fat, with the muscle, and tell them we have a procedure called M-Sculpt, which does 20,000 muscle contractions. It will build abs like you've never seen before. It's amazing. It does full crunches for you, and you just lay there and you're on your phone. But I was able to break down and tell them what was happening with your muscle fibers from a regular crunch in the gym versus what was happening with the crunch in M-Sculpt. A lot of people can't do that, and so people trusted me, and they bought more packages.
It's a very high level of trust for sure, especially when you're the owner of the business, and any business with the owners come. If the owner's the one helping you out, even if it's an ice cream place or whatever, it's just like you have a tendency to come back.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree.
All right, so I seeded this at the very beginning and said when I introduced you as the Dick Whisperer. So now let's get into the PhalloFill part of the conversation. Where did this come from? How did this come about?
Well, so I started focusing a lot. Well, first of all, I always focused really heavy on male clientele from the very beginning when I spoke about laser hair removal. So my clinic was always skewed about 55% male, about 45% female. It always was. We did a lot of male body contouring.
That would be very uncommon for the male.
It's uncommon. Industry. It's uncommon, yeah. So I had focused really heavy on like testosterone replacement therapy in 2010 when your general practitioner would not prescribe it because they were afraid of it. Now, most general practitioners will prescribe it, but at that time they would not. That was 14 years ago, almost 15 years ago. And so we did a lot of testosterone replacement therapy. I had a hair restoration surgeon that was doing hair transplants, moving the grafts from the back of the head to the front. And so I had a really large clientele of men. I went to go do training on a procedure that you may have heard of. It's called vampire facelift. The Kardashians made it really popular. So I went to go get training. It's a procedure that uses what's called platelet-rich plasma. We draw your blood, we spin it down, we collect the platelet-rich plasma, which has growth factors, and then we put it back into the face. That was the vampire facelift. Well, when I went for my training, the doctor who had created vampire facelift and owned that trademark also had trademarked a procedure called the P shot and a procedure called the O shot, which the P shot was priapus shot, so it was for the penis, and the O shot was orgasm shot, and it was for women who were losing sensitivity in their clitoris. So he's told me, he said, I know that you have a large clientele of men. I'm working on the protocol for this new procedure. It's called the priapus shot. Now it's been shortened to the P shot. Would you like to learn it? And let's do it together, and we can sort of collaborate and come up with a good protocol for it. And so I started doing those P shots in 2010. I sent out a newsletter to all my clientele because I didn't really have a way to separate them out between male and female at that time. And so everyone got it. I had a huge response because we were promoting. So we were promoting sexual performance, better sexual performance with it. So if people were struggling with erections or with sensitivity, it would help with that. But we were also claiming to make the penis bigger with this particular procedure. Well, after I injected it for about 18 months to maybe 2 years, I realized that I was having great changes with men's sexual performance, but I had not had one patient myself that had actually changed the size of their penis. So I had to stop advertising it and I had to stop making those claims. And so the other doctor that was the physician that was doing this, he was having these huge changes in size that was reported. I personally didn't see it, so now I'm not really sure if he did either. But so I stopped advertising it for that. But I knew that there was a huge clientele of men that wanted to change the size of their penis. That was the first time that I'd ever opened the door to see if anyone wanted to do that, and they did. And so unfortunately, I had to stop advertising it for that. So I did not have a procedure for any type of change. Then I started seeing men come in pretty regularly for the P shot. They were trying to use it for correction because of the horrible treatments that they were getting for girth enhancement in other countries, in Mexico, and even places here in the U.S. that are injecting illegal or non-FDA cleared substances in the body that's not approved to be used in the penis. And I had some penises come in that you would not have recognized it was a penis.
Oh my God.
I probably would have had to get a counseling for like suicide if I had to live with this, because this was, I mean, your penis is your penis. You only have one.
Yeah.
And it's very important to every man. And so for someone to come in and show me what they had to work with was
because of like a messed up procedure.
Yes, because of a messed up procedure. And so they were coming to me asking me to try to correct it with the P-shot, which it absolutely would not do that.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of people that came in. I saw a lot of stuff, and just I thought that there was no possible way that anybody could ever do girth enhancement and make it look good. That's what I thought from what I was seeing. Well, then
just like just crazy proportions.
It's not even proportions. It was like lumps and I mean disfigured, like you would like. I can't even. I can show you some pictures later on. But you won't even imagine what I've seen. Like some of the things that I've seen that were from permanent fillers, because permanent fillers are permanent.
Oh my God.
And the body doesn't like them, and they encapsulate them, and they turn them into hard granulomas, and they're like concrete, and they are they're in unusual places, and they're not symmetrical, and they're not even, and they're misshapen, and it's horrible. But I saw a lot of this. And so I thought there's no way that anybody can ever do girth enhancement and make it look good. Well, then I started seeing some people come in with hyaluronic acid dermal fillers. The nice thing about hyaluronic acid is that that's what we use in the face, in the nasolabial folds, the cheeks, the lips. It can be reversed.
Like Botox?
Well, no. So that's a neurotoxin. So I tell people to think about having a freezer and a filler.
Okay.
So freezers freeze the lines on your forehead so that you can't move them, so that these lines that I have, so that they relax. And then fillers plump up the wrinkles. So one freezes the wrinkles and one plumps up the skin.
Gotcha.
So we're talking about fillers here, and it's hyaluronic acid dermal fillers, Juvederm, Restylane,
okay,
the big ones that you know about on the market right now. But the nice thing about those fillers is that an enzyme called hyaluronidase can dissolve it within minutes. So if there's a problem, if there's a correction,
Gotcha.
it can be completely reversed. So it's safe, and it's naturally occurring in the body. So a large percentage of your body is made up of hyaluronic acid. So it's just a natural substance to the body. It's a great way to inject. So I started seeing people come in with hyaluronic acid injections, but it also was uneven, and had migrated, and it wasn't injected the best way. And I could just tell that the people that were injecting just didn't do a good job with it. Well, in 2020, when we were closed for COVID, I collaborated with a friend of mine who is a dermatologist that was trying to work on some girth enhancement with hyaluronic acid dermal filler, a plastic surgeon friend of mine from Mexico City that was doing a little bit of it, and a urologist that was doing some of it. And I sort of figured out what was not working, and saw a little bit of things that I thought was working, and came up with a little bit better way, I thought, to lay the dermal filler, and a little bit better of a pattern in which to place it. And so I asked about 5 of my friends in June and July of 2020, when we were closed for COVID, if I could inject their penises with hyaluronic acid, and promise them that I would be able to reverse it with hyaluronidase if something went wrong. And they all agreed, because every man wants to have a larger penis, and they trusted me.
Friends,
They trusted me. I've been injecting faces for almost 17 years.
Yeah.
So I'd done a lot of dermal filler, tear troughs, and a lot of some very delicate areas I had treated before. And so they all let me do it, and they all trusted me, and they all turned out great. And so
struck gold.
So it was the way that it was being injected. It was the particular way that I injected it, the way that we laid it, the particular place on the penis that it was put. And so it turned out to be really good. And so when we opened back up in August of 2020, I told some of my male patients about it, and they chose to pay for it at that time. And so I had my first paying patients for it in August of 2020. And then in September, I put up a Google AdWords campaign, and tried to get my website optimized for it, but it's going to take a while for that to happen. So I paid for some AdWords, and I was flooded with men that wanted to have their penises enlarged. And so I did it for September, October, November, December. Believe it or not, we actually have cold weather here in Dallas. And so in December, we had a cold front that came through, and all of my patients who had recently been injected came back with lumps and bumps and unevenness. What had happened is it got cold and their penis retracted, because the penis is very dynamic. It can twist and turn and expand and shrink and do all kinds of things. And so it retracted, and it made the dermal filler sort of like an accordion. And it had like lumps on it, like the baffles in an accordion. Luckily, it's hyaluronic acid dermal filler, so it can be dissolved if needed, or I can just correct and just put inside the little lumps and then just do some correction. So it was no problem for these guys, but it made me realize one of the major problems that people have from this procedure is they don't have any way to keep the penis expanded, extended, and compressed. And so I started working on a post-care garment that I now, as of Thursday of last week, I'm officially patented in the U.S. We had applied for patents in Canada, Mexico, UK, EU, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Those are the places who had actually sort of been coming at us because they have a lot of medical tourism, and they wanted us to expand into those areas. Now we actually have someone that has a huge male practice in Thailand that's trying to get us to come to Thailand. So this is expanding, but the reason is because I was able to develop over the course of about 12 months, and I had prototypes all the way through this post-care garment that we now have. And so I was able to compress and extend the penis as it healed, so it did not retract and didn't twist and turn, and now the dermal filler stays in place. So that's really what has set us apart. We have the top urologists in the country that are performing the procedure, and I mean the top. They're called KOLs, or key opportunity leaders. They're the best in urology, and they're injecting our procedure, but it's because of they've helped us come up with some ways to make some things better. And but our post-care garment that we put on the patient afterwards. And so this has turned girth enhancement into something that's safe, and it has an aesthetically appealing outcome, and it's reliable. We can repeat it on patients. And so that really, I showed it to one of my reconstructive urology friends in December of 2020, before I had the sleeve. And then a few months later, after I had the sleeve, and he said, "You have something here that we urologists have been looking for from the dawn of urology." And because every man asks us, "How do I make my penis bigger?" And we always have to say that there's not a safe, reliable way to do it. Don't do it. He said, "If we take this and we show this to other urologists, this is going to grow like madness," and it did. And so we've been recognized now by Urology Times and the American Urology Association, and the Urology Times even changed their position on girth enhancement just a few months ago, after we presented 2 studies at the Urology Times at the Sexual Medicine Society conference that was in San Diego in November. So we have made strides.
Conferences for everything, huh?
Yeah. So this was a urology, that was the sexual medicine conference. And then we just had a urology conference in San Antonio that was in May. And again, we just get bombarded with urologists that want to offer our procedures so much now that I'm struggling to get them in, to get them trained, because I personally train them all.
Okay.
And so, but it's been amazing. So it's the post-care garment, and then it's the injection technique, but it's grown like crazy.
So what does your day-to-day look like now then?
So there's 2 companies, if you will. There are 2 separate companies. So we have the National PhalloFill company, and I set this up with my business partner Dana in a little bit of a different way than what I've ever seen done before. We have a call center, if you will, that takes all the text messages, all the emails, and all the phone calls from our website. Our website has all of our 27 locations now. We've got more that are waiting to be trained.
And are these all your locations?
They're locations that are owned by other practices. So they're independent locations that I have trained to do the procedure.
So technically, if you owned a med spa and you hired a urologist that lives locally in your area, then you could potentially offer these services if this person gets trained by your company?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a urologist. Okay. We just had a lot of urologists jump on, which gives us a lot of credibility. But we also have some nurse practitioners that are injecting it. We have some physician assistants at some of the urology practices that are actually the injectors. So we can teach anyone who is licensed to perform the procedure in their state. So if they're working under a physician and they have delegation from the physician and it's legal for this particular license, such as an RN or a PA or a nurse practitioner to inject in that particular state, then yes, after an interview, we can take them on. We don't take on everyone. We get probably 2 to 3 requests per day, and we take on 10 per year.
Oh, wow.
We have a huge request, but we do background checks and we look at reviews and we interview a couple of times and we try and find out, like, one of the questions that I sneak in is like, I'll ask them if they're autistic, and I start trying to ask questions about, if I think that they're going to have the aesthetic eye to be able to make this work. So we do not take everyone. So we've been very picky, but, where was I? What was I talking about? I was telling you about my company. So we take the text messages, the emails, and the phone calls for the entire country and our location in Canada and Mexico and Puerto Rico. And so we answer the questions, and it's better because if you picked up the phone and you called a dermatologist or urologist or a plastic surgeon's office and said, I want to find out more about girth enhancement, the front desk person answering the phone is not going to ever be able to answer the questions like my team can, because they only answer questions about girth enhancement. And all of my male employees have all had the procedure, so they can talk about what their experience was like with the potential patient. So we take all the phone calls. So we're more of a marketing company, marketing and training. So we train them, but then we also do all of the marketing. We pay for their Google AdWords. We do their business page. We take care of their SEO. We do everything so that the provider only has to treat a patient, which is really typically what they prefer to do. They don't really want to always be businessmen. Right. So we just send them the patient when the patient is ready to treat and put them on their schedule. They come in, they get treated, but we handle everything on the back end. Wow. So that's my national company, and I don't have my hands in that as much because I have a COO. There's also an owner in the company as well that manages that company. Okay. And then I have my local clinic here in Dallas. I have a biohacking clinic, which you may not have really heard of.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That's on one side, which is a hyperbaric chamber and exercise with oxygen and magnetic therapy, and we have some really unique resistance training, cryotherapy, meditation bed, things like that for longevity, and to help you perform better. Sure. But then on the other side, I have my men's health, which is primarily the PhalloFill. And so on a daily basis, I'm injecting. So I've got scrubs on today. Gotcha. I think I've got 8 patients scheduled today. I've got people flying in from out of town. Jeez. I have a lot of people who fly in to see me because they hear podcasts such as yours, and then they only want me to treat them.
Which makes sense. Yeah. Well, after you hear stories of mutilated penises, you don't really want to go and anywhere else.
And one of the most amazing things about PhalloFill that I love to tell people about is that we've never had one surgical intervention. We've never had anyone have to go have anything done at an ER. We've only ever had one person that I know of that asked to have it reversed, and it was after one treatment, and he wouldn't follow the protocol. He wouldn't wear my post-care garment. He was uneven, and I said, "Are you going to wear your post-care garment this time?" And he said, "No, I'm not going to wear it. I don't like wearing that thing." He was an Arkansas farmer, and he was on a tractor every day, and it just wasn't right for him. Yeah. And so I said, I think we should reverse this. And so I talked him into the reversal. It wasn't as if he was upset and angry. And so we have great results, and our patients are very happy. Yeah. We don't have any negative reviews. You can't find anything negative about us on the internet. And we've been operating for 4 years now. So that's really unheard of. We've never had anyone claim erectile dysfunction, and we've never had anyone claim loss of sensitivity. So
interesting.
It's great.
Do you have to continue getting it? Like how does that?
So we increase the size of the penis by 1/4 of an inch with every treatment.
And by size, you mean girth?
Girth, only girth. Yeah. Now, our before and after photographs look like there's more length, but it's just because that penis is heavier, and the dermal filler builds almost scaffolding inside the penis to make it expand when it's flaccid. So we turn someone into a shower rather than a grower. So the penis looks longer whenever it's flaccid in our before and after photographs, but we did not change the erect length. I always want to remind people that we don't change the erect length. It's only girth. and it's about 1/4 of an inch per session. So if you want to gain an inch increase in circumference, we're going to see you about 4 times.
An inch?
An inch. So an inch will be like from here to there, an inch increase.
Are people coming in like frequently for that type of stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on what the goals are. So if it's just a man that just doesn't really feel that confident when he looks at himself in the mirror, and the energy of a man after he has had this procedure done, it changes his social life. It changes his work life. I've had entrepreneurs tell me that they had been stagnant in their careers and they had not developed a new product or they had not opened a new company. And then all of a sudden they have a penis that's 1.5 inches larger in circumference. They see that every morning. And I'm going to say big dick energy. I hope that's okay on your show. Yeah. And so the energy that someone has after this procedure is life changing for them. Yeah. It really is. And so, so sometimes people come in for that reason, just to improve their self-confidence. It's just for them. But a lot of times I have men that are married and they've had 2 or 3 vaginal canal babies delivered. And so sex between the husband and the wife is just not the same as it was before. And so if you're not touching the walls, you're not exciting your partner. And so I've got people who have told me that after 25 years of marriage and 3 children, that they are having sex like they never had, even when they were like newlyweds. And so it really can make some nice changes in the sex life, making your relationships better. I've had men that told me that they had to resort to this. I guess there's a term called having a bull, where you find someone to maybe have sex with your wife so that when you can't sexually satisfy her. And sometimes I think it's a fetish, but sometimes I think that the guy is trying to save his marriage. And so I've had guys tell me that they had to do things like that and that now they don't have to do that, so their marriage is better. So I know that I've saved some relationships, which I'm very proud of. I've made men have self-confidence that they never thought that they would have.
The confidence thing makes a lot of sense.
It does. It really does. I mean, I've been on podcasts for sex therapists a couple of times, and they've all told me that they've had men that they have counseled for 15 or 20 years that had low self-confidence because of the size of their penis. And the therapist says, I can't work through that. There is nothing that I can say to these guys over the course of 15 to 20 years that saves this. This is the one thing that is going to help me be able to make a difference in these guys' lives, is actually physically having a change in the size of the penis. And then their attitude changes.
Well, man, what's next for the company, for PhalloFill? Like what are the aspirations? What would you view as like this is an awesome case scenario if this happens in the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, an awesome case scenario would always be someone, a private equity group or someone that would like to come in and shove some money in to take us international. I mean, right now, I don't have the ability, the knowledge to be able to take a company from just operating here in North America to operating across the globe. So that would be a dream come true, is to someone come in and look at our numbers and give a prediction on my garment that I just got patented. I'm actually in the process of having it FDA cleared. So when we get this garment FDA cleared, it's going to be called a novel FDA clearance, which means no one has ever done it before. A lot of times you have an FDA clearance that comes up, that piggybacks off of someone else's FDA clearance. That's called a 510K. We will have a novel FDA clearance. It's going to be worth a lot of money. It is worth a lot of money to someone right now. I mean, we're already, are in the millions. If you look at take our EBITDA and multiply it by what it should be for the returning clientele that we have, because they do. You asked me earlier, how long does it last? And I didn't really get to that. If they do nothing to it, it lasts about 3 to 4 years. Okay. But with every treatment, we change it 1/4 of an inch. We've only seen maximum 1/4 of an inch lost in a patient over the course of 12 months. So we tell everyone, expect to have one treatment every 12 months. That 1/4 of an inch loss can be replaced with a 1/4 of an inch increase from one treatment. Gotcha. So we do prepare them to have a procedure done every 12 months, and we offer twice per year refill or maintenance specials that we send out via text message and email to every person who's ever been treated. And so they all have the opportunity to get a refill or a maintenance at a discounted price.
Oh, I'm sure that there's the customer data is also really valuable at that point, because then there's upsells and downsells, and we also have this and we also have that. And I'm sure private equity would be very interested in
We are currently getting between 5,000 and 8,000 leads in our lead nurturing software per month. It's huge.
Jeez.
I mean, we've been written up in the Daily Mail, New York Post. I've been in the Metastatics magazine as a profile piece, which is our big sort of aesthetic for plastic surgeons and dermatologists magazine, a magazine called New Beauty.
Plus your mom's house.
Your mom's house, Segura. Yeah. Tom and Christina, they're fantastic. I had so much fun. And then I actually went to he was in Dallas a week later for his show here at the American Airlines Center.
Oh, yeah.
Madonna, I went to about 2 weeks before at the American Airlines Center, and she actually had areas that were completely not sold. Tom had every seat in the American Airlines Center sold.
I believe it.
I mean, it was crazy.
I believe it.
And he introduced his vodka at that show. He had a private party afterwards, and I went down. I went down and I got a picture with him with his vodka, and so I had a great time at the show. That's awesome. But anyway, so I also have I have a major film company doing a film on me.
Oh no!
And they did the sizzle reel. It's been funded, and I saw the sizzle reel, and I actually could not believe that I actually was so interested that I would want to see the movie. I mean, he did a really good.
Like a documentary style?
It's sort of a documentary film.
Okay.
So it actually is going to talk about my upbringing in Alabama. It's kind of like some of the questions that you've asked about. It's going to talk about my med spa. I don't know if you know that I went to the U.S. Supreme Court. I took a major landmark case to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Oh, no way.
So it's going to be a little bit about that. I'm actually going to meet the president and his wife next week at a party on the lawn at the White House.
That's a bit of a name drop.
On Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, just to throw that in there. Yeah. Just something quick.
I'm really excited. I mean, like, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity to go to the White House. Yeah,
no kidding.
So I'm excited about that. So, but
who knew? Who knew that just increasing penis size would get you be able to go meet the president?
Yeah. I don't know if he even knows about that. They'll be interested to know that they know. Probably not. He doesn't even know who I am.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they're doing a film, and then a major part of it's going to be male enhancement and trying to make it normal for men to be able to have a conversation with their buddy about girth enhancement, just like women can bring up breast augmentation at the dinner table with the pastor sitting there beside them at this point. You know, Dolly Parton did all this for women in the 70s and started the process of making it normal. We're doing the same thing, we hope, for men, and trying to open up conversations so that men can discuss this and so that it's not so taboo, because it shouldn't be taboo for men to talk about this.
Make increasing dick size great. That's what we're trying to do here.
That's what we're trying to do.
Just normalize the conversation. To your point, though, like, dudes just don't ever talk about it.
They don't, but why not?
Yeah.
Because they think that it.
Well, now that there's like something to do about it, maybe before it was just like, why talk about it, because nothing can be done. you get what you get. You know.
I hope that this film, if it's becomes on some major streaming platform, that it will open up more conversations and make people realize that it is okay to talk about it, and that we don't all have the size penises that we want to have. Most of the men that I treat have a normal to above average size penis. So it's not that I'm treating small penises all the time. I mean, most of us that are in our network, most of the people have an average to above average size penis. But for the reasons that I may have told you, with the spouse, babies, maybe it's just that they do have a normal size penis when they're erect, but they are very much a retractor. And they don't look at themselves, and they don't have self-confidence in the mirror, or they're in the gym, whatever. But yeah, we need to be able to open the doors of conversation and realize that it doesn't mean that you have a micro penis is the reason that you're having the conversation. Because, like I said, most of the people that we treat have normal to above average size penises. They just want to be bigger. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be better.
Sure. Yeah. Well, hey, women do it all the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. When I got this, I get, I don't know, 200, 300 pitches a month in my inbox for people trying to come on the show or something like that. I follow Your Mom's House a lot. I've love a lot of comedy podcasts and stuff, and Tom and Christina are a couple of my favorites. So I saw that one, and then I got the pitch, and I was like, this would be a very interesting conversation. So I appreciate you taking the time to break all this down for us. Is there anything that I have not asked that you feel like you should? This is a question that I hate, by the way, because I'm an interviewer for a living and I don't like people ask this question. But for something like this that has a lot of like medical procedures and things like that behind it, is there anything that people should know that we have not talked about? I guess is the question.
The one thing that I like to tell people that if this is opened up for me to discuss is that we do non-permanent fillers versus a lot of people who do permanent fillers. And I just want to remind the audience that if they are considering to have something like this done, a permanent filler will migrate because they don't have our post-care garment. I guarantee it will migrate, and a permanent filler is a permanent migration, and it's a permanent problem. And the only way to resolve it is to this is a horrible word, deglove the penis.
Oh no!
And you know what that means without me even having to say it.
Yeah,
and scrape it out. Yeah. And so think about. I mean, permanent sounds great because you're like, okay, well, I'd rather have permanent because I never have to do it again. Permanent is not good. If permanent was good, all of the urologists would be doing it. It's not good. So stay away from the permanent fillers. I think that you covered the safety and the change. And I think that I've really enjoyed this interview. It was a great interview. I think everything was covered. I just like to reiterate that part about permanent.
Yeah, that is a really good point to bring up. I kind of forgot about that part of the conversation already because we've been talking for a while. But yeah, man, I'm glad that there's it's one of those things where it's like, you know how people make things illegal, right? The government makes things illegal, and they in an effort to prevent people from doing it, but it's always just like, well, people are going to do it anyway. Now it's just going to be shady when they go do it. It kind of is like one of those things. It's like, well, you ask your urologist, and your urologist says, oh, there's no safe or effective way to do it, so don't do it. And they go, well, I'll find somebody, and they go down to Mexico and like get a procedure done, and they come back and there's concrete in their dick, and now they gotta like deglove the penis. Oh man,
it's not just Mexico, by the way. It's in the U.S. So there is I'm not going to say the name, but there is a particular provider in Florida that is spreading training, and he uses a product that he claims to be patented. Who knows who patented it? It could have been patented for use in an industry. So a lot of times people say, well, I'm using medical grade silicone. This is another important point. I'm using medical grade silicone, and the providers in the US do that. Generally, our medical grade silicone is in a gallon jug, and it's used to be made in a factory to make medical grade silicone tubing or medical grade silicone mask. It was not medical grade made to be injected into your body, and it is not sterile. We see so many people who have had horrible infections, septic, in the ER, in the ICU, close to death. That these are my patients that went to other places prior to coming to have PhalloFill, and they were injected by this particular method that's being spread across the U.S. that uses a permanent filler. And I have multiple patients who have had pretty severe infections that spread in their bodies because the solution that's injected is not sterile. So we're using FDA cleared hyaluronic acid dermal filler that has FDA studies. It is reversible. So.
Yeah, that's the reversible part is probably the most important thing.
It is.
It's just like it makes you feel better about it anyway. Well, William, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. This is, like I said, fascinating conversation. Where do people go to learn more about you, learn more about this, maybe see the documentary or the film that's coming out, anything like that?
The film's not going to be out until 2026. Okay. I think that it's probably going to. I think they got a green light to probably debut at the Sundance Film Festival.
Okay.
And but as far as finding out about us, so it's www.PhalloFill, PhalloFill.com. And when you go to the website, if you scroll down, you can find a place that says text us. And that's the easiest, most confidential way to get information. You don't have to pick up the phone and have someone, go into a conversation. You can respond when you have time. Sometimes we nurture these guys through our text messaging for a year to 2 years before they pull the trigger. They have asked every question, and they can ask a question, then they can go do some research, then they can ask another question, they can do some more research, and that's what we like. We want you to be
with the idea for a few months.
Yeah, and we like for them to be educated so that we don't want someone to come in and do it that doesn't know what, everything about it. So So the text messaging from our website is a great way to communicate with us.
PhalloFill.com, PHALLOFILL.com. Head over there, text them, see what's up. William, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, man. Thank you.